Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. A shakeup ahead. President Marcos asks his entire cabinet to resign, triggering talks of a major government reset. The Agriculture Department requests a 10 billion peso budget to expand the 20 peso per kilo rice program nationwide in 2026. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa strongly denies U.S. President Donald Trump's claims of white genocide. And the U.S. formally accepts a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar, now set to be converted into the next Air Force One. Let's take a look at how global markets performed overnight. U.S. stocks closed sharply lower on Wednesday as Treasury yields surged amid renewed concerns that federal debt could skyrocket if President Donald Trump's sweeping tax cut bill is passed. A congressional committee is preparing a hearing to resolve Republican infighting over proposed budget reductions, even as analysts warn that the bill could add $3 to $5 trillion to the government's $36.2 trillion debt load.
Today is another wild, volatile day in the markets. Opened down, fought back, and then the major thing that happened was that interest rates went up. And so we had a 20-year auction. It did not go extremely well. It actually went pretty poorly, as the last two have now. So interest rates shot up across the board. It went up over 10 basis points over the 20-year and over the 30-year yield, and that's problematic. As we get through 5%, which now we are clearly through, it tends to gum up the works in the economy, in terms of consumer confidence, in terms of the stock market.
The three major gauges were down by well over 1%, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average lower by 1.9%, the S&P 500 lower by 1.6%, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ lower by 1.4%. Over in Europe, markets closed mixed. London's FTSE 100 flat with an upward bias. Germany's DAX higher by 0.4%, and France's CAC 40 lower by 0.4%. Here at home, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. calls for a courtesy resignation from all cabinet secretaries, signaling a major administrative reset following the midterm elections. The president says the move is part of a shift toward a more performance-driven government, one that focuses on results over politics. This strategic transition, coming after the 2025 polls, seeks to realign public service delivery with evolving national priorities and voter expectations. Despite the ongoing shakeup, Marcos assures the public that the government operations will remain uninterrupted. At least 4 cabinet officials have now responded to President Bongbong Marcos's call for courtesy resignations, a move seen as a reset in the administration's governance strategy. In a text message to the Bilyonaryo news channel, Interior Secretary John Vicremulla confirms that he will submit his courtesy resignation later on today. MMDA Chairman Don Artes also says that he will comply with the president's directive. And in a press briefing this morning, Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon said that he too will hand in his resignation letter today, praising the president's initiative to enforce a more performance-driven government.
As his people who he has handpicked to help him, we are duty-bound to follow that lead. No, and I will submit my courtesy resignation. In fact, I will sign it right after this, and I will send it right after this.
Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman is also joining the list, saying she supports the president's decision, stressing that all her actions are guided by what is best for the Filipino people. The Department of Agriculture is seeking a 10 billion peso budget for its 20 peso per kilo rice program in 2026. This as the government looks to expand market interventions amid sticky food inflation. Agriculture Assistant Secretary Arnel de Mesa says that the funds will be allocated to Food Terminal Incorporated, or FTI, which will purchase aging rice stocks from the National Food Authority for retail under the subsidized program. The proposed budget is double the 5 billion pesos currently allocated from the Office of the President's Contingency Fund. The DA plans to roll out the program nationwide next year as rice prices remain elevated due to global supply volatility and climate-related risks. The Department of Budget and Management approves the release of over 1.4 billion pesos for a peace-building program under the Social Welfare Department, part of the government's efforts to strengthen post-conflict economic recovery and local development. Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman has issued a special allotment release order, or SARO, for the program, which aims to improve the socio-economic conditions for families affected by armed conflict. The funding will also support long-term resilience by generating livelihood opportunities and community-led initiatives through local government units. The Bureau of Internal Revenue streamlines VAT refund rules to boost efficiency and to improve the business climate for exporters and investors. Under the BIR's new guidelines, taxpayers can now submit certified copies of sales invoices instead of originals when claiming VAT refunds. The agency has also scrapped 3-day documentary requirements, including importation records and proof of business registration. Starting April 2025, exporters no longer need to file proof of exports, as the Department of Trade and Industry will handle verification digitally. BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumaki Jr. says that the changes are designed to make refunds simpler, faster, and more accessible as the government pushes to reduce compliance burden and attract more investments. Only a fraction of companies in the Philippines are complying with plastic waste recovery targets, despite a national law requiring action from major producers. Now, a social enterprise is stepping in to help industry players close the gap and turn sustainability compliance into a scalable solution. Sujin Kim has the details.
Friends, we are at a critical juncture. Globally, the plastics crisis is drawing unprecedented attention and opportunity.
The Philippines is falling behind in its fight against plastic waste, despite a national law mandating recycling under the Extended Producer Responsibility Act. Only 20 to 30% of businesses have met their compliance targets. With over 2.7 million metric tons of plastic waste generated annually, mostly from fast-moving consumer goods, the government has raised the 2025 compliance threshold to 40%, signaling a tougher stance on accountability. Instead of building their own waste systems, companies are turning to Plastic Bank, a social fintech enterprise that turns waste into a form of currency. Under its model, plastic is collected from low-income communities and traded for groceries, tuition, insurance, and other essential goods.
We have 260 collection points. These are not only in Luzon. We have access until Visayas and Mindanao.
The system uses blockchain to track collection, credits, and reporting, ensuring transparency for brand partners seeking to file their APR compliance reports. Brands such as SC Johnson, Revlon, Coca-Cola, 3M, Henkel, and Del Monte have chosen to partner with Plastic Bank in place of building independent recycling infrastructure.
The Philippine EPR Act offers a roadmap to action, but it must be backed by the right enablers. It's about positioning the Philippines as a regional hub for circular innovation with Canadian collaboration and investment.
For each metric ton of plastic collected, companies receive a plastic credit used to meet government requirements. Collectors earn between 10 to 15 pesos per kilo, with additional benefits like medical insurance, schooling, and even microloans. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce is now calling for more incentives, public-private partnerships, and blended finance to expand impact at scale.
At the Canadian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, we are committed to advancing business-led sustainability. We must empower companies to invest in the systems and innovations that make circularity a reality. CanCham has proposed to the government to consider to incentivize obliged enterprises.
Plastic Bank is also developing a financial advance system, allowing users to borrow against their future plastic collections, turning environmental action into a source of financial stability. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Philinvest Development Corporation seeks to raise as much as 8 billion pesos through a perpetual preferred share offering as the group strengthens its capital base to support long-term growth. The Gotianon-led firm says that the fundraise is part of its ongoing capital raising initiatives. The Securities and Exchange Commission has also issued a certificate of filing for the enabling resolution supporting that offer. The offering includes a base tranche of up to 6 million preferred shares with an oversubscription option of up to 2 million shares. Indicative pricing is set at 1,000 pesos per share. The National Bureau of Investigation is tracking down a suspected online scam syndicate in Cebu City after a hacker exposed internal records tied to a global investment fraud operation. The NBI Region 7 launched an immediate operation after a hacker published a YouTube video showing what appears to be evidence of fraud, including names and faces of suspected scammers. The hub, located along Archbishop Reyes Street in Mabolo, was found abandoned when authorities arrived. NBI Director Jaime Santiago confirms that at least 40 individuals are under investigation for allegedly duping hundreds of victims in Europe, North America, and Africa through a fake online investment scheme. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Let's check on Asian markets this Thursday morning. Here at home, Philippine shares bounced back after a 5-day losing streak as investors scoop up bargains ahead of fresh economic catalysts. Now, the main PSE index rose 0.6% to close at 6,375, with the broader gains across most sectors except property and industrial. Analysts say that the market's modest rebound was driven by bargain hunting following last week's sell-off, but caution lingers as traders watch for key economic data, global yield movements, and ongoing trade policy uncertainty. Now, let's check on how other Asian markets are doing. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is in the red, lower by 0.8%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index lower by 0.4%. Straits Times Index lower by 0.6%, and Hong Kong's Shanghai Composite is flat with an upward bias. Taking a look at our market right now, the PSE Index is in the red in early trade, down sharply, down by over 1% to 62.98, fallen to the 6,200 level. All shares index down by about 1% as well. The financials, industrial, holding firms, property, and services counters are in the red, but the mining and oil sector is bucking the market's current downtrend, slightly higher, up by 0.1%. Volume is at 163 million. Value is a little over 1 billion. So far, market breadth is negative with 41 decliners, 67 advancers, and 44 stocks unchanged. Now, at the currency market, the peso opened slightly stronger at 55.65 to the greenback, higher from its previous close of 55.66. Now, executive health is no longer just about getting an annual checkup. In today's high-stakes, high-stress environment, longevity, performance, and mental clarity are strategic priorities for business leaders too, as the demands of leadership don't just wear on your schedule, they wear on your heart, your mind, and your overall well-being. To talk more about executive health and wellness, I sat down with top cardiologist Dr. Fabio Enrique Posas to explore the new frontier of executive wellness and how leaders can invest in their most important asset, themselves. Here's that interview. If you've been stressed out lately, whether it's because of the elections or something else entirely, this next segment is for you. In the world of business, stress, long hours, and high-stakes decision-making are daily realities, as are silent health risks often overlooked until it's too late. In response, a growing number of executives are turning to high-end wellness programs, combining early detection, preventive cardiovascular care, and strategic health planning to stay at the top of their game. What should business leaders prioritize if they want longevity, resilience, and peak performance? And how has technology changed the game? Joining us now to break it all down is one of the country's most respected cardiologists, Dr. Fabio Enrique Posas. Dr. Posas, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Maiki.
Okay, so Dr. Posas, based on your experience working with top executives, what are the key concerns that you see most frequently among this particular group?
The key concern really of the individuals who are driven business people, it's really that these individuals are working under very hard environments, stressful environments. And so stress is one of those factors. Stress leads to problems with weight, with sleep, with how you approach decisions. And as a result, because they are busy and they are stressed, they also don't exercise. So it's, the whole thing comes together against them in the sense that their health is impacted not only by their age and their genetic predisposition, but also the environments they're working in.
You know, all the illnesses that you have, it's just the body's response to the situation at hand, right?
Correct.
The high stress environment. Okay, taking a look at people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and above. Let's start with males. What are the key illnesses that plague these types, this age group?
The 40-year-old, specifically the males, we know several natural history things in medicine. One is that males tend to develop heart attacks much younger than females. And that is a well-known issue. The females are protected by estrogen. We aren't necessarily protected by estrogen.
Too bad the guys can't take estrogen pills.
You don't want to lose your voice.
Their voices will go down and they'll get boobs.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's not going to work for the guys.
So that just doesn't work for males. But what does work is the realization that beginning 40s, we need a better check. And we need to start looking at our health. We're no longer 25. We know that the incidence of coronary artery disease, heart attack, sudden death, begins at about 40 for males. Likewise, the new data suggests that cancer, colon cancer specifically, occur at a much younger age, such that the American College of Oncology suggests that we start doing screenings for colon cancer, for example, at age 45.
Yeah, the age has decreased.
Yeah, earlier, if you have a family history of colon cancers.
Okay, and what about females, Dr. Posas?
For females, in general, estrogen protects you. Gives you the headache at
by
the
about
end of
a
the month.
decade, right? But then everything creeps up, regardless of gender, at a certain point.
Yes, and it is a well-known fact. Females have developed coronary artery disease, for example, 10 years after the menopause. So they develop cancers and everything else at a much later date than males, except if they are genetically predisposed or if they are diabetics or smoke.
Okay, interestingly, we've seen a lot of sudden health scares, some even fatal, among high-profile individuals, some very young, not even senior citizens. What are the, can you talk to us about conditions that have come up? You know, people have been talking about abdominal aortic aneurysms. They've been coming out of nowhere. What is it, and how can we safeguard against this type of illness?
Aneurysms are one of the most difficult killers to pick up in medicine. Primarily because these are, if it's in the thorax, it's within the thorax, so there's no way to palpate that. And if you have individuals with big bellies, it is very, very difficult to palpate a mass in the aorta. So therefore, in order for us to be able to understand that, one is you got to look at your genes. How many of your first-degree relatives have had aneurysms of the aorta? That should trigger earlier screening. Two, if you have the risk factor for atherosclerotic disease, hypertensive, smoker, obese, stressed, you got to start paying attention to atherosclerotic disease because aneurysms are atherosclerotic processes. And, you know, screen them. For example, males, 60, who had a bypass, that patient should have a screen. Yeah.
Would an ultrasound of the entire abdomen help detect and prevent these types of abdominal aortic aneurysms?
The abdominal ultrasound itself can give you an idea about how the aorta looks. If you need a better test to do these, assuming that you do have the right indications and the right profile of patients, we can do our aortic duplex scans, which are more specific for the aorta.
How do you know when you need one?
One is, did you see any, I mean, based on profile, one. Two is, what about the patient? Any symptoms that they have abdominal pains, back pains? That tends to trigger us to look deeper into the potential issues.
Yeah, because this isn't something that typically comes up in an executive screening, in an executive checkup. These are the things that you have to call on for.
And we often uncover aneurysms, unsuspected aneurysms in individuals undergoing executive checkups.
Do you suggest people start incorporating them into their executive health checkups?
They should.
And at what age?
For aneurysms itself, if you have the genetics, if you have the risk factors at an earlier age, you should probably screen that. If you have had a history of coronary artery disease, you're a male, female, beyond 60, you should probably have a once-in-a-lifetime screen for aneurysm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in executive wellness programs, we often hear about early detection. Early detection is everything. What are the specific screening protocols nowadays that make that difference?
The specific screening protocols have to take into account what is it exactly that predisposes the patients themselves, the specific patient, to specific diseases. So for example, if you have a patient with hypertension, dyslipidemia, diabetes, obese, is not exercising, has a big belly, the likelihood of developing atherosclerotic disease is very, very high. So therefore, we pattern diagnostic strategies looking for coronary artery disease, diseases that predispose to strokes, diseases predisposed to cancer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another thing that's changed the game is technology. Dr. Posas, you've been in the business for over 30 years. How has technology changed from when you first started to where we are now?
Oh, technology has made a terrific difference. We have better imaging techniques. We can now virtually look at you, put you on an imaging modality and be able to tell you a lot more than we were able to tell you. Second is we have better medicines. And third is we have genetic studies now. We got tumor markers, for example. We can do now samples from blood and then pick up cells, abnormal cells that may indicate cancer within patients. Technology is moving. And we should be able to have those tests more validated and more readily available in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. The science and the technology and the research is all just getting better over time. But there's still a lot of work to be done. In terms of the medical technology space, where does the Philippines stand vis-a-vis the rest of the world, or perhaps our peers in Southeast Asia? I understand that at St. Luke's, just 6 to 7 months ago, you did your first robotic surgery. Can you tell us about the tech landscape in the country and what that robotic surgery entailed?
The tech landscape, I mean, in general, Filipino physicians are pretty good. What we have lacked in the past was good research and good medical facilities. The Philippines now is endowed with quite a few centers with highly advanced medical facilities. In St. Luke's, for example, we've created the Structural Heart and Vascular Intervention Center. And that center is basically designed to promote and expand options of care for patients who need them. And in that regard, we actually are looking at minimally invasive procedures.
That's a nice thing with the tech now. Everything can be done minimally invasively.
Yes.
Right.
So now we can do bypasses without doing the big open procedures. We can change valves without doing the big open procedures. We can change valves even without general anesthesia.
Wow.
So terrific improvements in terms of minimizing the scope of interventions.
And in precision and in accuracy.
Correct.
Also, better imaging enables you to see with more clarity and make better decisions. Okay, on another front, many high-end executive programs now offer stem cell therapy. What do you think of this type of regenerative medicine? Is it hype, or is it something that's going to be a need from now on?
I'm not a stem cell specialist.
Yeah.
But I do read a lot, and I've done quite a bit of research.
And your patients are undergoing stem cell therapy. Case in point, my father-in-law, your patient, is in Tokyo now doing this stem cell treatment. What do you think about this?
In general, no. In medicine, you never close your eyes because technology keeps moving.
Yeah.
And data will come that may show some benefits for this. We do know that stem cell therapy benefits quite a few medical problems, hematologic problems, bone marrow issues, lymphomas, leukemias, that kind of thing. We know that that works. Osteoarthritis, tendon issues, we know that that works. There's even some data now that perhaps among individuals who are having an acute heart attack, that giving the stem cells may actually help. Data small, but stimulating questions about how much benefit can we provide. The technology, the issue of stem cells for health, wellness, not a lot of data. There's still a lot of data to be provided by those individuals who do the therapy.
Yeah.
And so it is very important. One is what cell are you getting?
Yeah. Initially, it was like from sheep, right?
Yes, correct.
They'll get the stem cells from sheep. They regenerate it in a petri dish, and then they put it in you. But now they're able to extract that from yourself, from your own stem cells.
Correct.
Take it out. They do something with it, and then they put it back in you, and it's supposed to help you, help regenerate your organs, your tissues.
Yeah. I think we've moved on. For example, the sheep stem cells. It doesn't make a lot of sense to insert a foreign cell into a human body. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. Scientifically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's never been approved by the FDA, WHO, or any other significant medical delivery service. However, the issue of the mesenchymal stem cells is kind of interesting. The thought is right, but the data isn't there yet. How do you tell a pluripotential stem cell, the cell that can become anything, to go into the heart where you need it, to go to the kidney where you need it?
We're not yet there yet.
The technology isn't there, but it is interesting, and I think it is going to get there.
Yeah, there is the potential in that. Okay. Yeah. For executives in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are constantly under pressure, what does a smart, personalized health strategy look like in 2025?
The first word should be stay healthy. And when I say stay healthy, is adopt a lifestyle that is in keeping with maintaining your health. Stay trim, don't allow the belly. The belly is one of the biggest risk factors for heart disease. Keep on your diet. For business people, alcohol may be an issue. They have to entertain, they go to restaurants, they eat more than they need, they drink more than they need.
Yes.
So keeping an eye on how much alcohol you're taking may actually be important for your own health. Because alcohol, even though they used to say that alcohol in moderation was good for health, data now suggests that there is no amount of alcohol that is necessarily healthy.
Okay, on another front, let's talk about mental health, because that's just as important as physical health, especially for leaders under pressure. These executives are under immense pressure, lots of stress. How do we make sure that mental health is intact? Because they need to make the big decisions to move things forward.
Yeah, and it is not uncommon, business executives who are very successful may think that they are bulletproof and that anxiety or any mental illnesses does not apply to them. But oftentimes they may be wrong, and therefore seeking the right help, group helps or whatever else, may actually be a benefit.
Okay, all right. Let's do a quick fire round. Coffee, chocolate, some say they're good for the heart. What's fact and what's fiction?
Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate.
Makes sense.
Okay, coffee.
Yeah. Coffee in moderation.
Everything in moderation. Okay, what daily habits do you wish more of your patients would adopt for long-term health?
It's exercise, well-balanced diets. Remember that now there's good data now showing that diets actually can prolong life. Mediterranean diet data seems to be pretty good. Intermittent fasting has been shown to be of benefit. So there's a lot of issues that you can address in terms of diet. And then second is, of course, keep exercising.
Yeah, okay.
Don't lose muscle mass. Remember that andropause, meaning the loss of muscle mass, is one of the first indicators of aging. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, keeping your muscle mass is very important.
Yeah, All right. Is it true that we need less sleep as we age?
As we age, sleep latency shortens. So in general, people who are older tend to sleep less.
Yeah, but the expectation also is that the amount of work that you do decreases as you age. So less sleep, less work. You can't have less sleep and the same amount of work as you had when you were younger.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's natural also. That's a known issue, is that as you age, sleep latency shortens.
But for the executives that are having a hard time, that have sleep disorders, that struggle to get a good night's rest, what is the remedy for them?
Oftentimes, they go out, have a meeting, have a dinner, drink alcohol. Alcohol is not very good for sleep. Yeah, even though some say that they drink a shot to be able to sleep, but in general, it disturbs sleep. Lower your coffee, exercise. The key there is to look back at your healthy lifestyle and adopt it. If you need help, then psych can help address some of the anxieties that may be influencing your sleep patterns.
Yeah, and it's also our culture. Alcohol is celebratory. You don't say, okay, I closed the deal, let's have some tea, right?
Correct.
You know, there's a lot of changes that need to be put forward.
But it is in it's what I always say, moderation is the mother of all the good things.
Mm-hmm. How about power naps? How good are power naps for individuals that can have them?
I think for those individuals who are comfortable with it and who can have it, I don't see anything wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Now, going back to poor sleep, how does poor sleep affect you negatively? I mean, what does it do? You're a cardiovascular specialist.
Poor sleep is a significant issue, and it has to be dichotomized. Why is it that you don't have restful sleep? So you got to start looking at, are you snoring a lot? Is your wife or your husband kicking you in the middle of the night to stop you from snoring?
Yeah, a lot of people have undiagnosed sleep apnea.
Undiagnosed sleep apnea. And that translates into tiredness during the day and even mental issues as you go during the day because you're not sleeping well. And so if you are snoring heavily, if you're kind of overweight, and your wife or your spouse or your significant other is having to kick you in the bed to wake you up, seek help, because sleep apnea can be managed, and you can decrease mortality, strokes, hypertension, heart attacks if you moderate the effect of sleep apnea.
Yeah, and just need to be proactive about our health.
Absolutely.
Dr. Posas, lastly, what's the message you'd like to give to business leaders that have built companies? They map out their strategies for years to come, but have neglected their health in the process. If they could take away one thing from this interview, what is one thing that you would like to tell them or impart on them so that they can live longer, happier, and more healthy lives?
The question really is, it's a life balance, life-work balance, right? How much do you really need to be happy? And can you really think that you are going to build your business and not take care of your body? Because that often happens, right? We got so busy, we don't pay attention to our health, and yet at the end of the day is you get a cancer, you got all the money, you go anywhere else, nothing can be done. So all that effort that you put in to build your businesses don't go much because you did not pay attention to your own body. So it's very important. Keep an eye on your body. Stay healthy. I mean, you will enjoy whatever you made better if you actually keep healthy.
Yeah, and just keep visiting your doctor.
Absolutely, and don't forget the docs.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Posas. Health is a strategy too, as with business, and we just have to be on top of both fronts.
You know what I often say to patients? People are better at taking care of their cars than they are taking care of their own bodies. If you hear a knocking on the hood of that car, you'll send that car right up to the shop. Oftentimes we have symptoms. We don't pay attention to our own bodies, to our own detriment. So be proactive, stay healthy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts, and thank you for sharing your time with us, Dr. Posas. Executive health is a top priority. Let's all make it that. We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. A second chance for unity in politics fizzles out after Malacanang rejects conditions from the Duterte camp involving the return of former President Rodrigo Duterte. President Bongbong Marcos had earlier said he is open to reconciling with the Duterte family, but not if it means compromising the rule of law. The request to bring the former president back home amid his ongoing detention by the International Criminal Court was reportedly part of the negotiation for political unity.
Hindi po gagawin ng Pangulo na lumabag sa batas para lamang sa isang rekonsilyasyon. Hindi po magpapahawak sa leeg at hindi po magpapadikta ang Pangulo sa mali. Hindi po tatalikuran at babaliktarin ng Pangulo ang batas para lamang pagsilibihan ang personal na interes ng iilan. So tandaan po natin, lagi pong sa batas ang Pangulo. Kaibigan o batas? Batas pa rin po ang pipiliin ng Pangulo.
Senator Risa Ontiveros opens the door to a potential presidential bid in 2028 as the opposition seeks to rebuild its political base following strong midterm gains. Speaking after the senatorial wins of her allies, Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan, Ontiveros says they are now actively forging alliances with other political groups ahead of the next national elections.
Pag-isahin, i-consolidate to a greater degree than we were able to do after 2022. Mag-consolidate kami kahit yung process of selection ng strongest possible slate namin sa 2028 na lalaban at mananalo, we can decide that somewhere up the road. I'm not saying no, I'm open to all possibilities at yun yung hinihingi ko din sa lahat na mga kasama sa opposition or independent bloc na maging bukas kami sa lahat ng possibilities.
Former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo urges former palace spokesperson Harry Roque to return to the Philippines to face human trafficking charges filed against him.
Kung nakademanda ka rito, harapin mo. Kasi rightly or wrongly, tama man o mali, pag hindi ka umuwi at nagtatago ka doon sa ibang bansa, ang perception ng tao, guilty ka. Yan ang magiging problema niya.
Panelo's remarks come as the Department of Justice reportedly moves to coordinate with Interpol for a possible red notice against Roque. Last week, a regional trial court in Angeles City, Pampanga, issued arrest orders for Roque, Cassandra Ong, and more than 40 others for alleged involvement in qualified human trafficking. Roque claims that he has applied for asylum in the Netherlands, citing political persecution, a claim Panelo dismisses, insisting that Roque is facing legal accountability, not political retribution. A Philippine lawmaker warns that the proposed ASEAN unified visa system, modeled after Europe's Schengen zone, may pose national security risks that outweigh its economic gains. Re-elected Cagayan de Oro Representative Rufus Rodriguez says the measure could be exploited by foreign nationals posing as tourists, including alleged Chinese spies. He further warns that a unified visa could pave the way for an influx of scammers and transnational criminal groups involved in cyber fraud, human trafficking, and the narcotics trade. The Department of Tourism has expressed support for this initiative, however, citing its potential to boost regional tourism, business travel, and cross-border spending. The proposal is expected to be part of next year's ASEAN Summit agenda, which the Philippines will host. Rodriguez urges President Bongbong Marcos to closely examine the risks, stressing that security considerations must come before tourism-led growth. From waiting tables to building a food empire, meet the D siblings, the next-gen power duo behind some of the Philippines' most iconic dining brands. Ferdy Salvador tells us how they're taking risks, trusting their palate, and turning their family legacy into a multi-billion peso business. Here's that story.
Behind the success of Foodie Global Concepts, which operates more than 300 food establishments across the country, is the D family, led by their patriarch Enrico Ricky D. Trade Talks, the high life of the Bilyonaryo news channels, recently spoke with two members of the next generation of the D family, siblings Erica and Eric D. Eric is the Chief Operating Officer of Foodie Global Concepts. He got his early exposure in the business working as a waiter in the family's restaurant. His sister, Erica D, is the company's COO. She also handles operations of Yao Yao, a popular frozen yogurt chain.
Everyone, I think, was prepared to kind of take over the family business as well. So even as I was in college, I was opening my own shop in Ateneo. So I ran my own restaurant as well in Ateneo.
Really?
Yeah, while I
You were a working student, basically.
Yeah, so my parents stopped giving me allowances because they knew I was making so much money in my restaurant.
I grew up in the industry, so I always tell the story that I literally grew up in a restaurant. So my parents were...
You did?
Our parents were, I think, 19 when I was born. So
yes.
When they started that business, I was already exposed to the restaurants. For me, it felt natural.
Yes.
Even through college, I was working as a waiter in the US. And it felt very good, right? I felt at home whenever I was at a restaurant. I ended up handling a hotel in Kuala Lumpur as well, so still back into F&B. And it felt very natural for me to be in a restaurant. So when I had to take on the role, it felt like it was meant for me.
We asked them how they choose a franchise that they will bring to the Philippines.
It's always a gamble. You cannot really tell what will work and what won't. But you take calculated risks.
Okay.
Right? So
for Yao Yao, how did you make it?
So for Yao Yao, well, it was easy for us to bring it in. Even if we're not into yogurt, we saw the lines, the long, long lines in Singapore. And you can't question success, right?
Yes.
So as long as the price points are right, and we believed in the taste profile, so we tried it out, and now we're at 100 stores.
Eric adds they put a premium on authenticity and sustainability. If they think a store's menu is not suitable to the Filipino taste and doubt its long-term operations, they will not push through with a franchise. Erica and Eric represent the new generation of leaders in the food and beverage industry, integrating new knowledge they acquired with the business acumen passed on to them by their father. Ferdy Salvador, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Tensions run high at the White House as U.S. President Donald Trump accuses South African President Cyril Ramaphosa of allowing what he calls white genocide. Trump claims there have been mass killings of white farmers in South Africa and that their lands are being seized, an allegation strongly denied by Ramaphosa. The South African president is in Washington for trade talks with the United States amid concerns over the future of American trade preferences for African countries under the AGOA agreement.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
and then
take
when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
The farmers are black. The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black.
Finance ministers from the Group of 7 industrial democracies gather in Alberta, Canada, as global trade uncertainty mounts and new U.S. tariffs loom on the horizon. Talks come at a pivotal moment for export-driven economies, with the U.S. under President Donald Trump poised to double tariffs on fellow G7 members, including Japan, Germany, France, and Italy as early as July. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is urging allies to unite against China's state-subsidized export strategy, blamed for flooding global markets with artificially cheap goods. Also on the agenda, tougher controls on smuggling through low-value shipments, some linked to China and the global fentanyl trade. Philippine exporters, particularly in electronics, semiconductors, and garments, are monitoring the outcome closely as policy shifts among G7 nations could impact supply costs, trade flows, and regional competitiveness. And as global leaders confront economic uncertainty at the G7, another move out of Washington is stirring debate on foreign influence, defense transparency, and geopolitical alignments. The U.S. accepts a 747 jetliner as a gift from Qatar and tasks the Air Force to upgrade it into the next Air Force One. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth formally accepts the $400 million Boeing-made jet, according to the New York Times. Legal experts now raise concerns about potential violations of U.S. laws on foreign gifts, rules designed to prevent corruption and improper influence. Democrats move to block the transfer while Qatar defends the deal. President Trump, for his part, dismisses the ethical questions. Controversy adds to growing scrutiny of defense and diplomatic ties, especially as Washington seeks to maintain strategic leverage in the Middle East amid rising global tensions. Now, in the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV issues a fresh call for Israel to allow urgent humanitarian aid into Gaza as global pressure builds to address the deepening crisis. Speaking from St. Peter's Square during his weekly general audience, the newly installed pontiff called the situation in Palestine worrying and saddening, urging the international community to support unimpeded aid, access, and lasting peace. The Vatican's appeal comes amid warnings from aid agencies that Gaza is facing an imminent famine with humanitarian conditions nearing catastrophic levels. The escalating conflict continues to pose broader global risks, disrupting regional stability, affecting energy supply chains, and complicating diplomatic efforts across the Middle East. Now we have this just in. More cabinet secretaries are responding to President Bongbong Marcos's call for courtesy resignations. DSW Secretary Rex Gatchalian filed his courtesy resignation this morning. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tu Laurel Jr. has also submitted his, saying he leaves it up to the president to determine whether he stays in his post or not. Until then, he says he will continue to serve the DA to the best of his abilities. On his Facebook page, DICT Secretary Henry Aguda says that he stands by the president and will file his resignation. Migrant Worker Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak also said the same on his X account. Other officials who have reportedly expressed their willingness to comply to the president's directive include Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco, Dev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, and PCO Secretary Jay Ruiz. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.